he never planned to help her. That was the truth Daniel Harper would later admit to himself. That night, he only wanted to get home, check on his daughter, and forget another exhausting day that felt heavier than it should have. Being a single father had taught him discipline, patience, and endurance, but not how to ignore people in need. The rain had started without warning. Cold, relentless drops soaked the sidewalk as Daniel stepped out of the grocery store, balancing 2 paper bags and searching for his car keys. That's when he noticed her. She stood near the bus stop, clutching a thin cardigan around her shoulders, her head lowered, as if hoping the rain would forget she existed. A small suitcase rested by her feet, scuffed and overused. She wasn't crying. She wasn't asking for help. She looked stranded. Daniel hesitated. He told himself it wasn't his responsibility. He had a daughter waiting at home, a schedule, boundaries. But something about the way the woman stared at the street, counting passing buses that never stopped, made him pause. "Are you okay?" he asked, surprising even himself. She looked up quickly, eyes wide with caution. For a moment, she seemed ready to say yes, just to end the conversation. Then her shoulders dropped. "I missed the last bus," she said softly. "And my phone died." Daniel glanced down the road. The schedule board confirmed it. "No more buses tonight. Where are you headed?" he asked. She hesitated again. "Not far, just far enough." It wasn't an answer, but it was honest. Daniel sighed. "I can give you a ride." Her eyes flickered with disbelief. "You don't have to." "I know," he said, "but I can." She studied him carefully, measuring risk against exhaustion. Finally, she nodded. "My name's Emma," she said as she lifted her suitcase. "Daniel." The drive was quiet at first, broken only by the rhythm of rain against the windshield. Emma sat stiffly, hands folded in her lap. "You don't talk much," Daniel said gently. She smiled faintly. "I used to. Then I learned silence is safer." Daniel didn't push. After a few minutes, Emma spoke again. "Thank you." "Most people don't stop." "Most people are afraid of being late," Daniel replied. "I already am," she laughed quietly at that. When they reached her apartment building, Emma hesitated before opening the door. "Would you like to come in? Just for a cup of tea. I want to say thank you properly." Daniel thought of his daughter, Lily, probably finishing her homework at the kitchen table. "Just for a minute," he said. Inside, the apartment was small but clean, sparsely furnished, temporary, like someone who hadn't decided whether they were staying. As water boiled, Emma finally relaxed. "You didn't ask why I was at the bus stop with a suitcase." Daniel shrugged. "If you want to tell me, you will." She wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I left a job tonight, and a relationship," Daniel nodded slowly. "That's a lot for one night." "It felt heavier staying," she said. They talked longer than intended. About work, about starting over, about children. "You have a daughter?" Emma asked. "Yes, Lily. She's 8, Emma smiled warmly. "You talk about her like she's your anchor." "She is," Daniel said without hesitation. When Daniel finally stood to leave, Emma walked him to the door. "I don't know why you stopped tonight," she said. "But it mattered," Daniel smiled. "Sometimes helping someone reminds you who you are." They exchanged a polite goodbye. No promises, no expectations. Daniel walked out into the rain, unaware that this small kindness, this one ordinary decision, had just quietly rewritten his tomorrow. Because the next morning, as Daniel prepared for a blind date arranged by his sister, he had no idea that fate had already chosen the woman who would be sitting across from him. And she would recognize him the moment she walked through the door. If you believe one night can change everything, stay with us. This story has only just begun. Daniel had never been good at first impressions. He meticulously chose his shirt, made sure his hair was neatly combed, and double-checked that Lily had packed everything she needed for school. A blind date arranged by his sister, someone she insisted was perfect for you, loomed ahead. But Daniel approached it with the same caution he approached most things. Guarded optimism. The restaurant was cozy, candlelight flickering against the walls, soft music in the background. He arrived a few minutes early, scanning the tables. He noticed a woman waiting by the window, reviewing her phone. Something about her posture felt familiar. Then she looked up, and Daniel froze. It was Emma, the same Emma from last night, the same Emma who had smiled quietly in his apartment after a cup of tea, the same woman who had unknowingly stirred something in him he didn't expect. For a moment, neither spoke. The noise of the restaurant faded. It was just him, her, and the weight of unspoken recognition. She smiled first, a little awkward, a little unsure. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said. Daniel swallowed hard. "Neither did I." Emma laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I guess life has a sense of humor." He gestured toward the table. "Shall we sit?" They did, careful at first, polite, both aware of the irony and the tension. Daniel tried to make small talk about work, the city, nothing too personal. But every sentence bounced against the memory of the night before, the shared warmth, the quiet kindness. Emma glanced at him, curiosity in her eyes. "You remember last night?" "How could I forget?" Daniel replied. She smiled, but there was a trace of caution. "You were so kind." "I didn't do it to be kind," Daniel said softly. "I did it because it was the right thing to do, and because I wanted to make sure you got home safe." Emma's hands clasped together. "That's rare." The waiter arrived with menus, but neither really looked at them. Conversation flowed cautiously, then more naturally. They shared stories about childhoods, their families, and the little things that shaped them. Daniel found himself laughing more than he had in months. Emma's laughter was gentle, melodic, and it made the room feel warmer. Halfway through the meal, Daniel realized something unsettling. He wasn't pretending to be interested in her. He genuinely wanted to know her, not because of the blind date arrangement, but because of the person she was, the woman who had trusted him enough to let him help her, even for one night. Emma noticed his stare. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That last night, it wasn't just an act of kindness," Daniel said carefully. "It felt real." She looked down at her hands. "It was real. I didn't expect anyone to care." Daniel leaned back. "Maybe we underestimate what a small gesture can do." Emma's eyes met his, and for a moment, the world outside the restaurant disappeared. They weren't a blind date. They weren't strangers. They were two people connected by a single selfless act. When dessert arrived, neither really touched it. Daniel spoke first. "I should tell you, I didn't know this date was arranged before I agreed to help you last night." Emma blinked, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. "You're saying it's a coincidence?" "Fate," Daniel corrected with a small smile. Emma laughed, a genuine, unguarded laugh. "Fate has a funny way of working, doesn't it?" They finished the evening talking, laughing, sharing quiet moments between the restaurant chatter. Neither wanted the night to end, yet both understood it had to. As Daniel walked Emma to her car afterward, he hesitated. "Would you like to do this again? Not as a blind date this time. Just as dinner, maybe?" Emma's eyes softened. "I'd like that." For the first time in a long while, Daniel felt that familiar, warm flutter of hope. The kind that reminded him that life had a way of rewarding kindness in unexpected ways. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed, Daniel thought about Emma, about last night, about how one simple act of helping someone had led to this improbable, perfect moment. And he knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning, because sometimes a single night of kindness can lead to a lifetime of connection. And, for Daniel and Emma, that connection was just starting to take shape. The following week was a delicate dance of texts, calls, and stolen moments. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about Emma, about how her presence had made the mundane edges of his life seem sharper, brighter, alive. Every message from her was a spark. Every missed call a shadow of anxiety he hadn't known he carried. Emma, meanwhile, felt the same tug of unfamiliar warmth. She replayed their conversations, remembered the quiet confidence he carried, the ease with which he handled her presence. For someone who had just escaped a night of emotional and logistical exhaustion, the fact that she found herself looking forward to another evening with Daniel shocked her. By midweek, they agreed to meet again, this time for lunch at a small cafe downtown, somewhere public, neutral, yet intimate enough for conversation that mattered. Daniel arrived first, nervously straightening his jacket. He checked his phone, saw no messages, and felt a flicker of doubt. Maybe she had second thoughts. Maybe she'd realized how absurd it was to trust a stranger. Then she appeared. Emma! Warm smile, eyes bright, a quiet strength in her posture. She looked at him and laughed softly. I hope I'm not too early. You're perfect on time, Daniel said with a grin. They ordered coffee and sandwiches, and for the first few minutes, the conversation flowed like a stream cautiously testing the terrain. Small talk, jokes, neutral observations. But soon, the surface tension dissolved, replaced by something deeper, more honest. So, Daniel said after a pause, last night wasn't what I expected. Emma tilted her head. Neither was today. Yet here we are. Yes, she said. And yet here we are. She smiled, almost shyly. I keep thinking about how kind you were. Not just polite kindness, but real. You didn't have to help me, and yet you did. That stayed with me. Daniel leaned back, a little uneasy under her gaze. I didn't do it to be heroic. I did it because someone needed help. Someone small, vulnerable. And I didn't want to ignore that. Emma's eyes softened. It mattered more than you realize. Daniel glanced at her hands resting on the table. Strong, yet careful. You're carrying a lot on your own, aren't you? A flicker of hesitation passed across her face. I've had to. Daniel leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. You don't have to anymore. Not if you don't want to. Emma's gaze met his, and she smiled faintly, vulnerable and unguarded. I don't even know you, and yet I feel like I can trust you. Daniel's chest tightened. Maybe that's what life gives us sometimes. People we don't expect to trust, and situations we didn't plan for. They sat in companionable silence for a few moments, watching the world outside the cafe. Cars rushing past, strangers hurrying home, lights reflecting off rain-slick streets. Finally, Emma said quietly, You've changed how I see things. Not the world, me, my choices, my courage. Daniel didn't respond right away. He knew this moment mattered more than any word he could say. He reached out, placing his hand near hers on the table. Not touching, not assuming, just acknowledging. Emma didn't pull away. The rest of the lunch passed in an easy rhythm. Conversation flowing naturally, laughter that came without pretense, and the quiet realization that both of them were no longer pretending. Later, as they walked toward the streetcar, Emma stopped. You helped me without expecting anything in return, she said. Most people wouldn't have. Daniel smiled softly. And yet here you are, asking me to meet again. Emma laughed. That's different. This is real. This is me choosing to see you, not needing you to fix anything. He nodded. I get that, and I respect it. When they reached the streetcar stop, neither wanted to leave. Emma's phone buzzed, a reminder of the life waiting beyond this small moment. Daniel's daughter, Lily, needed him home. Responsibilities pulled them back into reality. Emma finally said, Tomorrow? Daniel's smile was immediate. Tomorrow. They parted, each walking in opposite directions, but neither truly alone. Something had shifted. An invisible thread connecting them, forged by one act of kindness, strengthened by honesty, and pulled taut by mutual respect. That night, Daniel replayed the lunch over and over in his mind. Not the words themselves, but the feeling of trust, of understanding, of quiet recognition. He realized that he hadn't just helped a woman last night. He had stumbled into a bond that could grow into something profound, something neither of them could have predicted. Emma, lying in her small apartment, felt it too. She thought of Daniel's patience, his warmth, his unassuming strength. She realized that in a world where most people acted out of convenience or self-interest, She had encountered someone who acted out of genuine care. And the question she didn't ask aloud, the one she feared revealing too soon, was already forming. Could this be more than coincidence? Could this stranger, who had entered her life by chance, become someone essential, someone she could rely on? Neither knew the answer yet, but both sensed that life had nudged them toward it. Because sometimes, one night of kindness is enough to open a door that destiny has already prepared. And tomorrow, neither would be able to ignore the pull that had begun to draw them together. The next day, Daniel woke earlier than usual, nerves humming through him like electricity. He checked his phone compulsively, though he knew the texts had already been exchanged. Tomorrow had arrived. He wasn't sure what he expected, but he knew it wouldn't be ordinary. Emma arrived at the restaurant a few minutes before him, her eyes lighting up when she spotted him. She wasn't nervous. She carried herself with quiet assurance. But there was something softer in her expression, a mixture of gratitude, recognition, and something neither of them had yet named. "Good morning," she said, voice light but sincere. "Morning," Daniel replied. "You're early." "I like to arrive before chaos finds me," she said with a small laugh. They were seated immediately, menus in hand but ignored. Words weren't necessary at first. Glances and smiles carried the weight of what had already passed between them. Daniel noticed the way Emma's fingers rested lightly on the table, her posture relaxed, yet intentional. He realized he was no longer just drawn to her kindness. He was drawn to her presence, the way she inhabited space with strength, yet remained approachable. Conversation began cautiously, as it always did when two strangers tried to become something more than strangers. But today was different. Today, neither was pretending. "I thought about last night," Daniel began, "and I realized how little it takes to make someone's life better. Just showing up, paying attention, helping without expectation." Emma nodded. "And sometimes that one small act can change everything." "Yes," Daniel said, "exactly that." They shared stories of hardships, of moments when life demanded more than they thought they could give. Emma spoke of jobs that never respected effort, of friends who turned away when times got hard. Daniel spoke of raising Lily alone, the loneliness of late nights, the constant calculation of how to balance responsibility and love. And then the conversation shifted, subtly, naturally, without announcement. "Do you ever think," Emma asked, "that some people are put in your life for a reason? That one act of kindness, it wasn't coincidence." Daniel looked down at his coffee, considering her words. "I think that night, helping you, I felt something I hadn't in years. Something that reminded me of who I want to be, not just for Lily, but for myself." Emma's gaze softened. "I felt it too. I didn't expect to feel seen." Daniel reached for his cup, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "And now? Do you think that feeling could be more?" Emma's lips curved into a small smile. "I hope so." The rest of the meal passed in laughter and quiet moments, glances that lingered too long, and the shared understanding that something profound was forming. No grand gestures, no promises. They simply acknowledged the bond that had begun the night before. Later, as they walked through the bustling streets, rain lightly pattering again, Daniel felt a protective instinct he hadn't anticipated. He noticed the way Emma instinctively wrapped her coat tighter, how her steps faltered over uneven pavement. "Careful," he said, falling into step beside her. "I'm fine," she replied, though the faint smile betrayed her. He didn't let her walk alone, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. They reached a small park, and for the first time they stopped, watching the world pass. Children ran across the grass, couples held hands, and the city hummed with life. Daniel felt something shift inside him, the knowledge that last night's kindness had led here, to this quiet, significant moment. Emma turned to him. "Daniel, I don't know what this is yet, but I know I want to explore it." Daniel felt a lump in his throat, something rare for him. "I feel the same way. One night led to something I can't ignore, and I don't want to. They stood there, silently agreeing without speaking. The tension of uncertainty was replaced by trust, by connection, by the simple understanding that sometimes life rewards kindness with more than gratitude. It rewards it with opportunity. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting gold across the city, Daniel realized this. He hadn't just helped Emma for one night. That night had unlocked something neither of them expected, an awareness that life, in its quiet ways, had given them a chance to build something meaningful. Emma smiled again, gently. "One night," she said softly. "One night," Daniel echoed, "changed everything." And indeed, it had. That night, as Daniel tucked Lily into bed, he reflected on the past 24 hours. The sequence of events, from the stormy bus stop to the restaurant, the quiet conversations, the shared laughs, had reshaped his life. Emma wasn't just a stranger he had helped. She was the beginning of something transformative, something real. Meanwhile, Emma sat at her apartment window, the city lights reflecting in her eyes. She thought about the man who had given her help without question, who had shown up again when she least expected it, who had become an anchor in her chaotic world. Neither knew what the future held, but both sensed the inevitable. That one act of kindness had evolved into something deeper, something worth exploring, something that could change the course of their lives forever. Because sometimes the line between a single act of generosity and a life-changing connection is thinner than you imagine. And Daniel and Emma were walking that line, together, step by step. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel and Emma's connection deepened. What had begun as a simple act of kindness, the drive home from the bus stop, was now a steady rhythm in their lives. They discovered shared humor, mutual respect, and the kind of comfort that comes only when two people feel safe being themselves. Emma found herself opening up in ways she hadn't since the last relationship ended. She shared stories of her childhood, her hopes, and the quiet fears that had kept her from trusting anyone for so long. Daniel listened, not with judgment, but with understanding, offering gentle insight when it mattered, and quiet support when words weren't needed. One Saturday morning, Daniel suggested taking Lily and Emma to the park. The three of them walked together, an easy camaraderie forming naturally. Mia laughed as they played catch with Lily, Daniel cheering, Emma smiling at the way he interacted with his daughter. Daniel watched her, realizing that his feelings for Emma had grown beyond gratitude or curiosity. They had become something far deeper. "You know," Emma said, breaking the comfortable silence as they rested on a bench, "I didn't think someone could come into my life so unexpectedly and feel essential." Daniel turned toward her, sincerity in his eyes. "You're essential, Emma. Not because of that night, but because of who you are. The courage, the heart, the way you care, it's remarkable." Emma felt a blush rise on her cheeks. She looked down, suddenly shy. "I've never had someone see me like that before." "I'm not going anywhere," Daniel said firmly. "And I mean that." For a long moment, they simply sat together, letting the words sink in. Outside, the world moved on, but inside that park, time seemed to bend around them. Later, that evening, Daniel walked Emma to her apartment. The city lights glinted on the wet streets, reflections dancing across puddles. He hesitated at her door, unsure of how to bridge the gap between friendship and something more. Emma sensed it and reached out, taking his hand. "Daniel, I feel it too," she whispered. He smiled, relief and happiness mingling. "I was hoping you did." They stood there for a moment, hands intertwined, hearts align. It wasn't a grand declaration. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, honest, and perfect. "I'm scared," Emma admitted quietly. "Scared that this us might be too sudden." Daniel shook his head. "Sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them. I don't care how sudden it is. I know I want you in my life. Lily wants you too." Emma looked at him, warmth spreading through her chest. "I want that too." The next morning, Daniel and Emma decided to introduce her properly to Lily, turning an acquaintance into family. That first breakfast together was filled with laughter, messy pancakes, and the kind of joy that comes from discovering belonging. Lily watched her mother and Daniel interact, sensing the comfort and safety in their bond. As the weeks continued, the three of them grew closer. Emma found herself planning small dinners at Daniel's apartment, helping Lily with homework, and sharing quiet evenings on the couch. Daniel realized that he had not only helped a woman for one night, but had also become part of a new, unplanned family. One evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Emma and Daniel sat together on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. "I never imagined this," Emma said softly, "that a night of kindness could lead to this." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand. "Neither did I, but I know it's real, and I know I don't want to let it go." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of fear lift, replaced by trust and hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Daniel asked. "For letting me be seen. For giving me a chance when no one else would," Emma replied. Daniel held her close. "No, Emma. Thank you. You reminded me what it feels like to care without expectation, to connect to love." And there, under the quiet glow of the city, they shared a moment that sealed their bond. Not as strangers, not as a temporary arrangement, but as two people who had found each other through courage, honesty, and a single act of kindness. The night of the blind date had been nothing more than fate's playful hand. But what followed, the laughter, the trust, the slow weaving of their lives together, was entirely their own making. Because sometimes one simple choice, to help someone, to show kindness, can become the first step toward a lifetime of love, trust, and family. And Daniel knew, as Emma rested her head on his shoulder, that helping her that night had changed not just her life, but his own in ways he could never have imagined. The story wasn't about chance anymore. It was about choice. And every choice they made from that moment forward would be theirs, together. One night of help, one connection, one love that grew from kindness. It was more than fate, it was destiny.